You're listening to Tapestry, a podcast by a music lover for music lovers. I'm your host, Kelly. Join me as I learn more about the common thread that weaves throughout our lives, music. Welcome to episode 6 of Tapestry. On this episode, I dive into some deep and difficult topics with Miles Maltbie, a Santa Cruz-based multi-instrumentalist. Please note, I will mention some content warnings in a moment here. Miles is a huge advocate for using music as a tool for healing, particularly for victims of sexual assault, drug addiction, and other traumas. We discuss the nature of long-scale musical collaboration, using music as a means for closure and overcoming trauma, and how and why advocacy is important. That being said, there are quite a few content or trigger warnings for this episode, and I do think they're pretty necessary. This discussion includes content related to rape and sexual assault, abuse, including physical, mental, emotional, verbal, and sexual, and suicide. A couple mentions of drug addiction, things of that nature. So if you do have sensitive ears, I just want you to know that this discussion covers a lot of those things. And the purpose of this discussion was really to find solidarity and support in overcoming those traumas. Me personally, I've found this conversation a little hard to process, kind of like when I left the interview, but I hope that by mentioning these things up front, I can use it as a warning for what you're about to hear, but also to use it as a tool to discuss uncomfortable topics. So the song you're going to be listening to now is called Familiar Face. Typically, I struggle with my introduction for the podcast, but if you're ready, I'm ready.
I'm ready. I don't know, I think the best introduction is like no introduction. Like, I like conversation. I mean, I don't like to be all super formal or...
Me neither. So I guess that being said, without further ado, Miles, thank you for being on Tapestry. Thanks for offering to show up today when you've had a pretty rough day, it sounds like, but just a little bit about you. Sounds like I can describe you as a singer-songwriter. You're active in the Santa Cruz area, and you have been very, very involved in working on making music videos with your fiance, and you tackle a lot of deep subjects in your music. So I'm going to let you take it from here.
Well, so I work with my fiance. We produce the videos together, and she is amazing at kind of helping me gather my ideas in, I think, a sense that is relatable. Like, I find myself to be hyper imaginative, and I get really excited, and not everyone's as able to deal with all that energy, and it's nice to have someone to help me manage it in pieces that are more digestible for the general audience.
Okay. I didn't ask you this, but how did you meet your fiance, and sort of how did she come to be involved in your projects?
We met when we were 14 years old in
an
improv class.
Okay.
We did improvisational comedy together, and we used to perform with each other, and I was pretty abstract. I've always been very abstract. I don't know if anyone really got my comedy back then. I was like an awkward, traumatized kid who often had panic attacks on stage, and you couldn't tell if like I was telling a joke or if I needed medical attention. It was usually somewhere in between.
Okay. Now, in knowing that, let me take a step back. I know that music is something that profoundly affects your life. I'll have a song leading you in, but how would you kind of describe your own music, and who are your main influences?
My music is Usually it starts out very raw, and my demos are often recorded with whatever I have close to me. I like to joke. A lot of my best singles have been written in a goat barn, which is actually I used to sleep in a goat barn. I was squatting in the mountains, and it's true. Like Dead Crows, the song that's coming out with a new music video, I did write in a goat barn underneath a full moon, and
Nice.
I
I
don't know
approve
if that
heavily.
anything. I don't know if that adds anything to the character of the song, but it has come a long way. I recorded at Big Ego Studios in Long Beach, Los Angeles. It it's a studio that Sub Pop and other big rock and roll kind of labels use. So I had a band with all these friends I'd played with for most of my life. Came from Arizona, Los Angeles, up in Oakland, Santa Cruz. We all met in LA and recorded live in the studio. And we worked with James Meter, who is an amazing engineer and producer. That guy, I owe so much to him. He is just one of the most supportive people in the world. And I think what he's done with my songs and what he's helped me achieve is it's kind of, I guess, the best explanation of how my music comes together. It's a collaboration. It's not just me. It's not just my voice and my feelings. It's like it's I find it better to work with other people because you end up with a whole new voice, and it's like a
Mhm.
chorus.
Now, one of the things that I know I really wanted to ask you about, and you were saying, just be as vulnerable as possible. You stop me if I ask you anything uncomfortable, but I know your latest stuff is about addiction and a lot of trauma you've been through. And I don't want to say it's cliche, but a lot of musicians do go through a period in their life where they're suffering with depression or any number of maladies. And that definitely sounds like it's a place that you've come from.
Mhm.
Um, did you like I know you had said in your pre-interview question sort of you had started to pick up saxophone when you were younger, but it was only after you had gone through a traumatic event. How has that worked into you with your project Werwisp and everything else you put out musically?
Well, so I mean, it is unfortunate, and I think I'd use the word unfortunate that so many people are abused and traumatized, and I think that music is one of the best vessels for healing that exists. And so it totally makes sense that a lot of musicians would be using this tool to heal. And I think that it's often stigmatized to have a lot of feelings. I'm often told I'm too sensitive or too emotional when
Oh, me too.
I don't like that because it's not like I can control how much I feel. All that I can control is how I express it.
Right.
And I think when I write songs that in the end a lot of them are supposed to uplift. They're supposed to help people through difficult times. It seems like one of the most positive outlets I could find. So I kind of shun that whole concept of too emotional. I don't believe in it. I was often called emo, and I claim that only as a way to empower myself with my emotions and to align with others who may have been called emo or too emotional.
Right. Were you at least called emo during like the peak emo years when emo was in? Because that would probably make a big difference.
I wouldn't say it meant I was popular, but
Okay, okay.
and
I would say fair enough because I know like we kind of well I'm thinking about how we met at least over the internet. We met through the Hemisphere music group, and I remember our conversation was something about like how nature inspires you to create music and having a sense of place and environment makes a big impact on what you sing and what you write. Can you tell me a little bit about sort of your involvement with Hemisphere? Maybe explain a little bit about what that is. I know you had contributed a single to that upcoming project, right?
yeah, so I find when Mark and I connected, Mark Grabau is the creator of Hemisphere, for anyone who's not familiar. And he and
Mhm.
I really bonded deeply about our struggles with not just addiction, because addiction is a reaction. Beneath addiction is trauma, and trauma comes from pain. And it may not be from the same instance or the same experience, but people who are in pain like that, we we often find solace in each other. They say
Mhm.
misery loves company, but I think more it's like the traumatized need community. And so I'm working with Mark and with other people to create a strongly supportive community. Like, I was already doing that on the West Coast, he's doing that on the East Coast. And when he and I met, we really found a lot of synchronicity in our vision. And we decided that to unify would empower that community for both of us and for everyone. So it's
Mhm.
it's so it's so necessary right now to have a strongly supportive community for people who are, not just musicians, but the supporters of the musicians. And I'm doing a show right now which is all about creating a supportive space for survivors of abuse and domestic violence. And it's unfortunate that it doesn't exist like it should. I find a lot of people, I'm using the phrase "we are not alone," and the reason is because a lot of people feel alone, and I just want people to know I'm with you. Like, you can
Mhm.
contact me, and you don't have to worry. I'll be right there. I'm gonna listen. I'll respond, and that's what this whole community is about. And so when I saw that Mark was doing a compilation and it was to help people struggling with mental illness and addiction, I immediately wanted to support him, and I started to help him promote it. And he invited me to put my track on it, and I'm very grateful for that. But really, my support for it is the cause. I
Mhm.
strongly believe in that message and that cause, and I hope a lot of people benefit from that compilation.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by it myself because it just, music means different things to different people, and I think we all kind of have our own demons to fight. And for me personally, I don't have probably anywhere near the same level of trauma as you do, or other people, but that's kind of a thing I turn to, and that's sort of why I made this podcast. I just figured it was an interesting way to kind of draw some of those stories out from people who might not otherwise be compelled to share it. I know I've heard the term highly sensitive person before. Like you were saying, you have too many feelings, you're too sensitive. But I really shun that too, because there's like an intrinsic link with telling people to just kind of put up and shut up and deal with it and move on with your life and brush it under the rug. And
Mhm.
I don't think you're never going to get closure that way, ever. So um, I know one of the other things that I really liked when I delved more into your project was you're doing that upcoming show, like you were saying, to benefit domestic abuse
Yeah.
survivors, but specifically that Monarch
Mhm.
Services thing. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So the show is called "We Got You," and my friend, his name is Brandon Michael. He's coming from the hip hop community. We merged as two worlds together. So I'm from what I call, I guess, freak folk is the genre that was given to me. I'm quantum core freak folk, and then he is.
Wait, what? Freak folk? I got quantum.
I guess I should explain a little bit. Quantum core. I call
Yeah,
myself quantum core,
quantum core.
as kind of a joke, but I'm a quantum creature. I don't, I'm an anarchist when it comes to the laws of time and space, and I consider myself quantum core. And then freak folk. There's a guy, he owns Solid State Records in Minneapolis, and he told me my music is freak folk. So I'm going. I love
I
it
love
too.
that.
I like the word freak. Yeah, let your
Freak
freak flag
folk.
fly. Um, and my friend Brandon Michael, he's coming from the hip hop world, so "We Got You" is a very hip hop kind of thing. Uh, but the
Hmm.
purpose of it, Monarch Services has been around since 1975. in Santa Cruz County, helping communities bilingually, so Spanish and English, and they help people recover from abusive relationships and domestic violence situations. And they have a rape crisis hotline. They have a lot of services that we want to support. And there's very personal reasons why this is important to me. And I can elaborate on that. But the more important thing is that I'm empowering myself to overcome my own struggles in life by putting all of my power into this event. And I haven't really played shows
Mhm.
because I am healing. So that much of this year, for the last quarter of the year, I haven't played shows, but I've put all of my energy into planning this show, and it's turning out to be one of the biggest promoted shows I've ever done. So it's awesome, and all the money that we're
Okay.
raising is going to this shelter. So Monarch Services is a worthy organization to support. And if anyone listening is in Santa Cruz County, November 24th, we're going to have this show at Michael's on Main in SoCal. And so I feel I'm very grateful that as a musician I can do that. And it gives me a feeling of control in a world that's often very chaotic and kind of helpless feeling. And I
Yeah.
really don't like to feel helpless. It it can be overwhelming, and so I'm working to do these events more and more. We have a group called Venegas Media, Brandon, Michael, and me, and it's all a nonprofit cause. It's named after our friend Willie Venegas. He passed away from an overdose, and we talked to his parents and got their blessing to
Mm.
use the family name. And we're working to do more benefits like this. So this is the first of many.
Okay. So activism is very important in your music. I know you had mentioned kind of like your musical roots, how you picked up instruments, kind of the musical background you came from. It all totally ties into to having music be something that ties you to your community.
Hmm.
Could you tell me a little bit more, just like how you grew up in Oregon, just some of those things that I found really interesting about how they turned you into who you are now musically?
Well, my mom, she now lives in Washington, but when I was younger, she lived in Oregon, and she's a social worker. So she's always been working to build community, and she's an activist in many ways. She's a lesbian, so she's an LGBT activist, but she's also just working in general for community building was the message I got. I was raised to think that that's important and it's central. And so building a music community, it goes beyond just a fan base. I don't like using the word fan. I use community member because to me, if you are part of
Okay.
my community, you're a member of that community. So if you support it, you're a member. And I want to support you. And so it goes both ways. And I think that you
Right.
never know what someone can offer when they show appreciation. I'm actually working with a drummer right now who started out just appreciating my music and reaching out to me online. And I needed another drummer to work with dependably. So it worked out and we're jamming together and he's great. So, and I don't want there to be like a weird power dynamic because I feel it's kind of I guess I'm not into the ego thing personally. I
Yeah. No, I don't get that sense about you at all.
I want to
Like none.
reach a lot of people and that, I have to play the game, but that doesn't mean I have to put my ego into the game.
Right.
And I detach as much as I can. I try to break it down. I guess that's the activist in me. So I don't believe in the ego side of it, so I'm actively rebelling and protesting against that. And I'm doing everything I can to break down the barriers. Like we we actually go to concerts where other rappers and stuff are charging $100 for meet and greets, and we go and we hang out with people for free.
Right.
and trying to circumvent, just be like, well, we're gonna throw this really cool party right next to you, and it'll be free.
Nice. I love it. That's like all the little tiny like uprooting the system. Like it's you're not acting out of maliciousness, you're just trying to make your point peacefully like right next to the guy. Like that's so great. So as a performer, like okay, let me take a step back. Like I'm as a consumer of music, I'm 100% with you. Like the artists I support, sure, I support them because I like the way their stuff sounds, but um being that I don't listen to much mainstream music, the thought of going to a meet and greet, not that it doesn't happen in the genre of stuff I listen to, but the thought of going to a meet and greet is just so like absurd to me.
Mm.
It sounds like you kind of use music as sort of this well, I'm going to quote my own intro here. It's the thread that weaves between us all. It really is, though. Like music is that line you kind of cast out there, and you're drawing people in with it. So, um, have you mostly built up your, I guess, friend group and sort of your community like through collaborations with music?
I largely, I guess, yes, I have done that. It's a very organic process, so it's hard to know how I've even achieved anything because, like, Ben Rosette, for instance, I remember, and if he listens to this, he's gonna think it's funny, but I was sitting at a cafe in Santa Cruz, and I'm with my band at the time. This is 10 years ago. I was in a band called Wascatic, and I look behind me, and
Okay.
there's Ben, Justin Sty, and whoever else was with them. They're just beaming, smiling in the sunlight, and
Oh, this is all the Strawberry
yeah,
Girls
when they were
guys,
the
right?
trees. This is
Or
when they were the
okay.
trees. This is the OG stuff, and
Oh,
we invited
oh
them over
wow.
to our house to serenade them with our vocals, and we had five vocalists in our band. I just remember them being like super like supportive and into it, and then suddenly we're just playing shows together all the time. And Ben used to play shows in Wascatic as a drummer, and then I used to play saxophone in the trees, and it was like one big entangled family of musicians. And I remember like we would do these house shows in Monterey, and it would be off the hook. Like there would be five bands in a night, right? And the whole place is packed. There's free tacos, free enchiladas. Like we had,
Damn, why aren't you playing in Pittsburgh? Jeez.
and then we had. I would play saxophone with every band because that was my thing. So I remember playing five sets in a row and just being like high on the music because for one,
Right.
my breath is probably getting me high, but I was in a whole other dimension. By the end of the show, I don't know where I was, and that to me is the magic of it. And it's yeah, it's like I want to break down the stage. You know, I have another hashtag I want to share. No stage. If you see me
Okay.
no stage, it's because there is no stage, and it's just as important.
That is that is profound, really. There is no
There is
stage.
no stage. The audience should participate just as much because without the audience, there's no music. Like I can play music by myself, but there's this profound experience when someone not just listens but responds. And you know, it starts with me playing a song with other people in a band, and those people are responding to my song. And then you have the audience and
Hmm.
everyone around, they're responding too. And that's where it gets very, for lack of better words, spiritual. I mean, I know that is very cliche, and I really try to not fall into cliches. So if that is gonna put it in a box, don't think of it. If you can somehow imagine
Right.
like the meaning of it all, the meaning of life and music for me is that connection that is shared between, you know, within the song, between the audience and the performer. And so I remember, I like going back to these memories. I remember throwing a show where Justin Sty, who is a great musician that I'm actually recording a song with him in the near future. So
Oh,
I'm
nice.
gonna put that out there to hold myself accountable, and also like an Easter egg. Like we are in the works right now, and this is to me it's a big deal because I didn't even know where he was for like 8 9 years, and now I'm reconnecting with him, so it's
Hmm.
amazing. And I guess so. We were throwing a show, and his girlfriend at the time had all kinds of painting supplies, and we had like all these different workshops in the audience, and people could be involved in their own art as we were performing. And
That's
I thought,
awesome.
yeah, I think it's the most awesome thing you can do as a an event producer is to create just as much of a way for the audience to participate. And it's to me, I experienced that, and then immediately I thought this is the answer. Like this is exactly what I want in a show. But then you innovate every time. How do you participate?
Hmm.
And that's where the fun part comes in.
That's true. I know I bring up this topic a lot, sometimes on this show and sometimes out of it, but like my fiance personally, she'll think I'm picking on her, but like we emote very differently.
Mhm.
She'll go to a concert and I know she's enjoying it, but she'll be standing there stock still and just kind of like grooving her head. And then I am like running around singing, crying, mosh. Like I am fully in this bitch. Like I am so I'm like so experiencing the moment that I don't know how to turn it off. So that kind of experience, like, is that really the best part of it for you? It's, like okay, I know you said hashtag no stage, but let's say you're on eye level with your audience, your community members. I'm picking up the lingo as I go. You're on eye level with everyone and you just see like someone just like totally feeling it. Like how how does that make you feel? Like what does that inspire you to do?
It inspires me to do something awesome, equally awesome. It's like a feedback loop. Like I reflect your awesome and amplify your awesome back at you, and then hopefully it keeps happening. And I think at the end of the show, you just end up with a summation of all of that awesome amplified. So
Excellent. So you are not a one trick pony. Like you're really able to you play a couple different instruments. You collaborate with all kinds of people cross genre, and I know you had mentioned some of your influences growing up. Like I was sort of surprised to hear you say that your what it was your brother, I think, right? Who played trombone in a
yeah.
band, and like where do you draw a lot of your musical influence from?
Well, I grew up in a family which is very focused, especially the way my mom raised us, is focused on performance. So I was all about dance classes and music and different plays and performances. And since I can remember, I've been performing. I remember being 4 or 5 years old, singing Disney songs for performances. I mean, it's probably cliche, but that was like the most inspiring thing at the time was like Aladdin and Lion King like blew me away. I didn't put that on,
Those are two of my
I didn't
favorites.
put that on my list of your questions, but I guess I said it.
That's
I
fine.
said it openly, so I'm not afraid to say it. Man, when Lion King soundtrack came out and I was 4 years old, like that blew me away, and it probably still influences me.
It's there's no shame in that, literally. Like I mean that's what I grew up watching. I would have my mom put Beauty and the Beast on VHS and then it would finish and I would just sit in front of the TV and go, "Again?" Like, "Do it again. I want to watch it again. I want to listen to it again," because those are like the things that stick with you.
Yeah.
No, that no shame in that at all.
But to answer your question about the influence of the music around me, I had my older brother was in the Insiders. It's a group in Santa Cruz. They're still playing, and they've been touring all over for at least all my life. And so it's almost like 28, 29 years because I'm 29,
Hmm.
and as long as I can remember, they've been around. And
Okay.
my older brother plays trombone. He still plays. He's currently a chaplain at a boarding school, in Minnesota, and so
Oh.
he's still playing. And I'm also going to put out there, because this is how you manifest. I really want to bring him in on my songs, and I guess it's
Hmm.
another spoiler alert, but there's some horns that are definitely coming into my upcoming albums, so be ready for that.
Nice.
And I
I'm ready for it.
really want to bring my brother in on it, because I think it'd be a great way for us to connect and bond. And I'm a saxophonist and he's a trombonist. And, you bring trumpet in, Justin Stibe playing trumpet. So, boom, right
Right.
there, easy horn section.
Do you have a preference on which instrument you play? Because I'm just like hearing you talk about that. I play sax, I play trombone, I play a bunch of other stuff, and I think like a lot of people will kind of have a certain connection to the instrument they play at a certain time in their life. Has that waxed and waned, or are you always like, yes, I'm always excited to pick up a saxophone and play?
I'm not always excited to pick up a saxophone and play. And
Honesty.
it may come as a surprise. I don't know. So, saxophone is like the closest to my soul, and I'm not always excited. Like, when when I was 12 years old, my grandmother passed away of a really tragic death, and I went through a time where my family was breaking down, and we moved halfway across the country south of Chicago, and that's when I started playing saxophone. And so I believe I put more of my soul into saxophone than any other instrument, and there are times where it's too sensitive, if that makes sense. Like,
Hmm.
it it's not always fun and games. It can be. Oh man, like I'm playing with these Brazilian bands right now, and that's fun. Brazilian music is off the hook. Like, they really know how to jam. And so
Yeah, yeah.
I love that, and it's kind of getting me back into the fun of it. Um so guitar is, I guess, to differentiate how I utilize them, I'm a singer and I've always been a singer. I'm always a poet and a songwriter. And guitar gives me a way to fuse my poetry and my singing into a like cohesive song structure. And from that, it also relates to a bandmate I had who passed away. His name was William Harrison, and he was a father figure of mine. When he passed away, he was 57 years old, and
Mm.
he was my guitar teacher essentially. I went over to his house, and he just basically offered me free lessons from the get go, and we hung out. We became friends. We started Wascatic on his back porch. We played in a band for 2 years, and I try to continue guitar in his honor and his name. And I know he wanted me to. Like, I used to be confused. What do I do with more than one instrument? Because I can devote myself easily to one or the other. And it may be
Hmm.
my ADHD, but when it comes to two, I'm suddenly like, what do I do? Like, is it even possible
Yeah.
to keep devoting myself? And it's a juggling act. I'm not always perfect at it, but I do a lot to invest in both. And even within that, like, I have three guitars. I have a Telecaster, a flamenco guitar, and a blues guitar. And I equally invest in all the instruments, because they are, to me, living, breathing entities that need love and care, and you should not neglect them.
I like that answer. That's nice.
Is that a good answer?
Oh, that's a great answer. Yeah, because you think about. Have you ever seen the movie Mr. Holland's Opus?
Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh! If you want to talk about sensitivity and emotions, that if that movie doesn't make you cry, I think you might be a robot. Like that is just a classic. Just it paints such a beautiful picture of what music can do for a person, and it's kind of like okay, inspirational story about band director lifting up his betrodden class of students and that sort of thing. But when you think about movies like that and somebody who maybe has a lot of emotions like you do, a lot of times you think of like an instrument calling to them, like, oh, I just knew the second I set my eyes on this trumpet, my fingers were meant to play it. Like, and I think that's kind of a really beautiful way to, in a sense, have a relationship with an instrument. So I'm kind of surprised. Oh, I'm actually not surprised that you only really have two. You know, that those are kind of like your two babies that you protect and care for. But you do have a penchant for branching out into other genres. I mean, you know, I had asked you like, what's your favorite type of music, and you're like, everything. So how do you balance that? Just like dabbling in little different side projects and stuff.
I don't know if I have balance. My fiance will attest that any given day I will go pretty much directly from like crazy house techno anime soundtracks to like deep emotive like Godspeed You Black Emperor metal. And
I mentioned that band on my last podcast, and my guest was like, "Who is that?" I'm like, "Oh my god, you have to listen to Godspeed You! It's like incredible."
So good. And I love Spotify because it allows me to go even further. I've tried to push myself with my genres, and I get locked into these pigeonholes, and I'll listen to one album over and over and over again. And what I love about Spotify is like the idea of a library is kind of thrown out the window, and it becomes more of a
Mm-hmm.
universe. So instead of a music library, it's like the music universe, and then where do I want to go today? Or I look at Billboard magazine and I get, I try to keep up on the current trends, and sometimes I'm really surprised at how awesome artists are. There's this guy Trey something. He's a an Australian South African or Troy. I think it might be Troy.
Are we talking about Troy Sivan or Troy Sivan? I don't know if
Yeah,
I'm pronouncing that right.
he's
Yeah.
awesome. I love him. Like I'm all about what he's doing. I'm really sad that he didn't beat Eminem at getting number 1, especially because Eminem's being homophobic. Surprise! And then there's an
Eh.
LGBT artist that like is killing it right now and should be number 1. So I like
Big surprise. Eminem is controversial.
I like to push myself to expand all the time, and I I find there are elements I like of all kinds of music, and then there's also criticisms, and there's value to criticisms. There's values to hearing something that disturbs me or something that I don't agree with, and then I can maybe that furthers my art and makes me want to do something different.
Hmm. That's yeah, you're full of like great little profound insights on stuff. You would think for a person who hosts a podcast, I would like be surprised by nothing, but there's just a lot of little things in this conversation that I feel like I could kind of take back with my own art. The thing that I just hooked onto there was really important, especially in the not just political climate, but social climate we live in, is that critique is important. And a lot of people are just so willing to only look down the single tunnel that they
Hmm.
are headed down. And I don't think that's beneficial for humans in general, but especially not artists. So, what have been some of the challenges you've faced with that? Like, as a performing and recording artist, what do you do when you get a crappy response? I mean, how do you
Well,
handle that?
um, most of the time I'm able to just continue because Uh, some of it's hilarious. I've had some really so I got crowd reviewed. It was a free offer on Reverb Nation, and they basically
What is crowd review? I'm not familiar with Reverb really that
they
much.
had all these people listen to my songs and write a review, and so
Okay.
it's people who I don't know what they're expecting sometimes because I had one song. It's called Illusory Ghosts, and like if you want to look for that, you can look for Fairy Folk, my old project, Illusory Ghosts, and it's it's funny because one of the reviews was like, "Why is this song 9 minutes long?" And they were just not able to deal with it, and like I guess it's a difference of opinion because when Smashing Pumpkins did songs that were 9 or 10 minutes, I thought it was awesome. Um, but I also grew up as a hippie in California and Oregon, so
Well, that's
maybe
like prog rock territory is 9 to I mean, hell, I listened to something the other day that had a 22-minute long song on it, and I thought to myself, is this really necessary? But I'm like, there's got to be a reason for it. Like, let the art be, let it breathe, let it do its thing, whether it's a 41-second song or a 21-minute long song. So, um, I think one of the big takeaways there was something you had actually written down to me, like just be weird. Like, who cares that you wrote a 9-minute long song? Something you were feeling made you want to write a 9-minute long song. So how does that, like, expression, the whole weirdness is beautiful thing, how does that affect everything else in your life?
man, sometimes it's like I want to be weird and I embrace my weird, and I find it also difficult to connect with people in general. And so I'm trying to connect with people and at the same time keep in touch with my weirdness, and like I I mean, no one really thinks of me as too weird in my life, cuz like we all accept each other, and I think that's awesome and I'm really grateful for that. And at the same time, it's like I when I'm talking to, new people about my music, um it's hard to find where I fit, I guess. And I'm still looking for what is my scene. A group called All Human that is like I could see my music sitting next to them really well, and the drummer Brian, he and I are connecting really well. So I want to be real. Like I want to continue being my authentic self, and I won't stop. And I also am just searching for people who connect with that.
Right. I think there's kind of two camps. It's like you can either mold yourself to be sort of what the expectation is for society, or you can just do whatever the hell you want. And the people who appreciate the whatever the hell you want, they're going to come find you eventually. But I imagine that's difficult to manage because you have to put food on your table. Like, you're trying to do this art. Well, actually, I mean, you are trying to do this as a living, correct? Or are you kind of in between worlds where you have like full-time career and you're doing Werwisp and all your other stuff on the side? You do want to make this full-time?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Okay. That's really difficult to try to promote that. What's like, what are some of the experiences you've had in your local scene? Have they been mostly positive in trying to kind of network with people?
Yes, and I guess it comes down to degrees of separation. Like I've found when I sing and people hear my voice, they stop and listen and take it in, and then it's really, and maybe this is just repercussions of being bullied most of my life. I just feel like people don't want to get to know me. They like the idea of me, and I don't want to keep perpetuating that. And I guess now I'm getting all existential, but maybe it's
Please do.
maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the one perpetuating the idea that people won't want to get to know me, and it could just be a matter of opening up in a different way. And now I'm gonna reflect on that, and that might change my upcoming albums. So
Well, at least you're like very aware of your thoughts and some of your honesty and stuff. Just, I don't know, it speaks to me. It's always hard to grapple with your own worst enemy, which tends to be, at least for me, me. Like, I really am my own worst enemy. I had a note here, and I was just looking back at my notes. You did study
I
psychology
did.
for a little bit, right? Okay. I can I can hear it. My fiance was a psychology major too, and so I think it's great that you have such a deep connection with your music that way. And it's, I guess, the connection to your music and the ability that it
Hmm.
has to heal you. Your music as kind of an extension of your brain and your thoughts. Like, how has that affected how you go out and look for people to be in your band? Like your lineup itself, who right now is actively kind of quote unquote your band, and how did you find those people?
I have Nathaniel Gutenberg. He's a drummer I work with, and Sophie Fielding is another drummer I work with. She is living kind of farther away from me. She moved with her girlfriend to the East Bay, and I live in Santa Cruz. And so Nathaniel is someone who is in Santa Cruz, and I'm looking to play a lot more shows with a full band, and I needed a dependable drummer to do that. And so then I have Maitland Von Turner in Los Angeles is a violinist, and Matt Gray is a guitarist in Arizona. He's who I worked with, and I'm working with a new bassist as well. And I guess I kind of like to. So the whole idea of Werwisp is that it's a changeling creature, and my band is a changeling band, and it's driven by me. And I work with a lot of different people. I don't want to give away too many secrets of my uh, upcoming collaborations because I have some surprises coming out in the next year with my recordings, and you'll see soon enough if you keep up with my social media. And I I feel very grateful. Um, Last fall, as an example, I was challenging myself to record a new album, and my fiance said, "Just start a new band." Or I was down on myself, like I need to start a new
Mm-hmm.
band of people. And then by the end of the day, I had a full lineup, and she was like, "What? Like you're ridiculous!"
Yeah.
Like, and I have so many people who support me that I create many ensembles, and it's the dependable long term ensembles that uh, haven't always worked out. And then I started working with these Brazilian musicians, and they're like, "That's just life." Like, I don't know if it's a thing in Brazil or what, but I've worked with a few different groups now where they just keep changing it up, and they're like always inviting me in on a set, and then they might fill in on a set. For instance, We Got You's lineup has those people, Nathaniel, and we have a couple like people that played with like Shaka Khan and like all these.
Oh,
I know, like
dang.
crazy. And
Big name. That's awesome.
seriously, and like these, we have a keyboardist, we have a bassist, lead guitar, rhythm guitar, Brazilian percussion, rock and roll drums. It's like punk rock meets like Brazilian folk meets hip hop, and
Yeah.
it's fun. Part of my art form is creating these ensembles because that ensemble exists for this We Got You benefit, and then I don't know where it's gonna go from there. Like maybe I'll play with
Right.
like a couple of them further down the line, but it's
So it doesn't bother you, and in fact, it's not even that it bothers you; it's that you encourage kind of this like transient collective almost. It's less about, hey, like Slayer's been a band for 30 years now, and these are the same five guys we've had who all have chemistry. It's like Grateful Dead or something. Like the members change and you kind of all riff off each other and stuff.
honestly, I'm not a super big Dead fan, but I believe that's probably the best relation is something like the Grateful Dead because it's more important to me that there's this vibrant, interactive, thriving creativity and an outlet for my songs. I am the songwriter, and I know that that can often be limiting if you have one songwriter in one band, it often stagnates. And I feel more so that this will continue to grow and thrive, and there's a lot of directions that it can go. And I was invited to tour with a whole bunch of rappers, and I also have been invited to tour with an Australian rock band. And it's like it can go any number of directions, and that's fun to me.
Yeah. That's crazy. Like, I guess I'm so used to the idea of a band. Like, it's, here it is. Like, this is our lineup, and that's really cool that you're kind of systematically breaking that down. I mean, it has its roots too in some of the stuff from the '60s and the Canterbury scene and all these jam bands where you never know. Like, you walk into a room and you're gonna have 8 different guys on the stage, and then that's the only time it ever exists. It's that lineup for the particular day.
Right on.
I think that's great. Um, I feel like that kind of, not that it puts the pressure on your bandmates, but it's sort of like, ooh, I might be out after this. Like, you're gonna go off and do some other thing, but that's kind of the beauty of it. How did you get approached by the Australian rock band? Are you gonna take it up, or I mean, are you mulling the idea around at
Now
least?
I'm bringing it out. Yes, I want to take them up on it, and it's been kind of in the air. And they found me online, and the singer, she reached out to me, and then she just really liked my songs, and I'm very flattered because honestly, like those were the songs I recorded in my garage, and it's like they were, independent artist of the year in Australia and stuff. So it's like, really, like, okay, I mean, if you really like my songs, but I guess I can. I need more confidence, and I've gained. I recorded at a studio called Big Ego, which is kind of a like inside joke, but I'm trying to inflate
The
my
irony.
confidence a little bit, and then yeah, I really like them. She's one of my good friends now, and I feel again like this deep spiritual connection, and I feel like it's meant to be, and it's just a matter of, I guess, just aligning. Like sometimes things align and then it happens, and I'm just waiting for the right coordinates to align.
No, that makes sense. I can't imagine being in that position though to just go, sure. I mean, I have some people wanting to collaborate with me, and I can't overcome this hump. Like, I'm not a real musician. I, like I said, you're your own worst enemy, and it sounds like you blew that out of the water like years ago. You're like, I came out of the womb singing. Like, I'm ready to go. I'm a musician through and through. So you should be proud of that. Um, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the music video you filmed for your song "Familiar Face" because I watched it and it was just like so authentically weird. And it actually, on second watch, you know what it reminds me of is the show The Mighty Boosh. Have
Yes.
you ever seen it? Yeah, okay. Because I didn't really watch The Mighty Boosh that much, but I have actually my friend Katie that I interviewed in my second episode. She's like giant Mighty Boosh fan, and she's like the embodiment of oh god, is it Vincent? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's like the female version of Vincent. It's just great. But that's the vibe I got with the goofy contacts and just like, tell me about that video and how you hatched that whole concept because it was just so weird and I loved it.
Right on. I'm glad that it was weird enough, and the concept came from the song "Familiar Face" is about trying to reach someone in a relationship, and they're not being their authentic self, or you feel like there's masks that they're wearing or layers that you can't get through. And it originally was more of a negative spin, and then with this video, because I'm very happy with my fiance, and so this is the happiest relationship I've ever had, and we decided to make it more about kind of accepting ourselves and accepting each other for our weirdness. Like in that, so in the story, I don't want to spoil too much, but I have parts of me that I want to have accepted by my partner, and I'm lost in my world. But it comes down to being too weird or too emotional. It's like at one point she tells me, "You always seem like you're somewhere else," and I say, "You can come with me because I want to share my weirdness. I want to share my imagination in my world."
Right.
And So the big message is that the big message is to embrace yourself and in all of your weirdness. And I feel the characters were really just kind of brainstormed, and like the peacock alien, I mean, I don't want to spoil too much. I guess it's such a strange concept.
I'm pretty sure I dropped a link the other day, so it's kind of like, here you go, like have at it, like please give you the page views.
There's a peacock alien creature, and that was just something I thought would be really neat. And it's maybe from my psychedelic upbringing of California and the West Coast, but that's how my brain works. Like the cool thing is we got super deep into that makeup. Like I am a diva at heart, and I just let my heart out. And we researched. We had 4K cameras, and we researched the best makeup, and we got like Parisian French high def, crazy. Like I got really into my research for that, and then my fiance and I collaborated. She did all the makeup though. Like we collaborated on the design, but really it came down to her expertise, and I'm super into that.
is Is that Erin's background? Well, I guess because you guys met through, yeah, you met through improv and stuff. But does she have a background with theater and that sort of thing?
Yes, she does have a background in theater and everything, and she's a very creative person. She mostly has done her own makeup, I think, until that production. She has done a lot of video editing, and she didn't edit that movie, but she really helped me with the screenplay. Jeremiah Hutchins is the cinematographer who shot and edited, and he's in Los Angeles now. Um, and Aaron and I wrote the screenplay together and just kind of brought the vision to life. And that was achieved, I think, most authentically through the makeup, because without it, the creatures just would have been bland, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. So the video format, I mean, I think it really works well for the style of your songs, and they're sort of like bright and happy, and a little goofy maybe, but that video is in complete contrast to what you've described to me about the Dead
Yes.
Crows Can't Fly video, and just some of the stuff that I've seen you post in the Hemisphere group. So is releasing musical videos sort of like that's one of your main goals in continuing with this project, is sort of
Hmm.
capturing the mood of it through
It
that?
really is, because I think that the videos help to kind of complete the vision for me. And my songs they've been described as stories. And so each story deserves a whole production. And I think that videos are a great way to kind of fill out the spectrum of the story.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that. I really like the answer you gave me, by the way, about who you would collaborate with. It just kind of made sense to leap from there. But um, why would you want to collaborate with Lady Gaga? I mean, really, why not is the better question, but why?
I love Lady Gaga and I love Sia and everything they're doing to help women and trans and genderqueer voices that are often marginalized, in terms of just the kind of support they're bringing, and then also the people they work with, the women and the people that songwriters they work with. Like I just feel their force in the music industry is helping to thwart and uproot the toxic culture that's been there in power for so long. And I'm all for it. I'm 100% supportive of that. And I really want to work on a project related to We Are Not Alone. And We Are Not Alone has to do with survivors of abuse. I am a survivor of sexual, physical, emotional, and verbal abuse. And I'm speaking out now I've helped to stand up for some of the closest people to me this year, and I spoke out against people that were close in my music community. And now, believe me, it is
Mm-hmm.
not easy. Um, it has been completely a struggle and a fight. And I am so deep in it that I just want everyone to know that I am in this fight to the end. And this show, We Got You, is just the beginning. This is just the, trailer, essentially. Like, where I want to take this is essentially the world and the sky and the universe is the limit. Like, I'm taking this all over. We're going to be touring We Got You as a show all over. And so just to put out on the dream board, I really would love to work with Lady Gaga to do something in that movement, because I want it to have as much reach as possible. I want to really make a stand. I mean, I'm putting my entire self, my entire well-being into this to protect other people's well-being. And I'm not at all even
Mm-hmm.
hesitant. Like, it's difficult, and I do think this support community that we're creating works because it's supporting me. And the proof is in the product. Like, I'm part of it, and let me tell you, like, without these people that I'm working with, Susie Rubio, Amy Slack, Brandon Michael, Aaron Roberts, my fiance, like, these people have kept me going. And by continuing to keep going, we're going to help other people. I've had people open up to me and tell me their stories even before they knew I was doing the show. And I can only imagine, to me, that was a sign from the universe that I'm doing the right thing. Because it wasn't when I was planning the show, but they didn't know. And now
Mm-hmm.
we're promoting it. We're going on the radio. We're going, like, in all
Right.
the newspapers locally, and we're raising more awareness about this event than I've ever seen in Santa Cruz. So this is this is what I'm giving back, and it's truly it's truly heartbreaking how much we need this in the world and how much pain there is in the world. It breaks my heart every single day.
Yeah, I know that you, not just you as a survivor, are not alone, but just this afternoon, actually, when I was doing some research and stuff, another person I'd reached out to, blew this whole sexual abuse. I don't want to say scandal, but just an example of it in their local music scene, just right out on the bulletin board for everybody to see. And I think that exact type of action is unfortunately the only thing that's going to get the results that not only survivors deserve, but the world needs to see, because there are a lot of people that go and do terrible things that they don't they don't ever see, the survivors never see justice for it. So in taking this kind of mentality sort of community wide and beyond, I think that's fantastic. And if that helps you also mend some of those wounds, there's really win-win for everybody. um, I'm guessing then the response has been really, really great in Santa Cruz and around. Like, how wide is your reach right now? Where are some of your other tour stops, kind of?
Well, I'm setting up shows in San Francisco area, and it's either going to be simultaneously with a show in Oakland, I think. There's going to be two shows, and then Los Angeles, Portland, Seattle. I want to go out to Indianapolis and Detroit, and I set up a show recently in Austin, Texas, and I'm
Hmm.
working on the details, but I have a venue in mind and people who I the thing that's empowering me is I'm finding people who feel the same amount of investment and the same amount of passion about this, and that makes me feel hopeful. I reach out to people and I tell them thank you for being so outspoken. because it helps me feel heard. It helps me feel like I'm not alone. And, I guess I've had one person say we shouldn't have to say thank you, or, but
Yeah, but
I feel that.
if it gives it that genuine connection, I think that's probably the right thing to
I
do.
feel that. I feel grateful. And, it's because I'm struggling with it and I see how deeply entrenched the toxicity of rape culture is. And it's horrible that so many people don't even speak up to their close friends and family. And the only way that I've heard, or the most powerful way to heal from trauma, is to talk. Talk therapy is proven to be the best way to heal PTSD. So the fact that people don't want to speak up is really sad.
Yeah, but it's totally an ingrained response to shut that in, I think. And they always say like you have to give a voice for the people who don't have one, or they're not ready to use it at the time. So I think that's incredible what you're doing. Have you mostly been able to get those venues cooperating with you? Like, do you reach out to the venue first, or do you go through like a charity or a domestic abuse survivors group first, and then you kind of tell them about what your vision is for the musical event?
I think the best way to go is to go through the charity first. That's from experience, and it usually I found going to the venue first is a good mark. But there's always this weird dance, to be honest. I've booked a lot of shows, and even getting artists to sign up, it's like, well, you want to play a show, and someone is going to ask, what are the details, right? Like, it's hard to gauge someone's commitment if you
Mm-hmm.
don't have details. But then the venue, you go to the venue and say, hey, we want to throw a show. They're like, what are the details? And so there's this weird magic involved with gathering those details when you have nothing rooted. And when you're doing a benefit event, I find the most important thing to have solidly rooted is the benefit, the cause, getting the organization on board and planning like how
Right.
they want to promote it, how they want to work with you. And then you gauge, we found a venue. Okay, this is a good answer. The venue was chosen because it was not triggering. There were not, as far as we could tell, many people who have had bad experiences at this venue.
Right. Right. Because word spreads so fast when you have it, or at least it should. Like like anybody involved in a musical community is going to know, oh, no, I don't know, don't go there, I had a bad experience there. So that's kind of like what you're using to filter out where you're going to plan these, correct?
And filter out who I want to work with in general. Like, I have chosen to not work with a bunch of people and a bunch of venues because they are complicit or involved in abuse. And I'm not with that. Like, I'm building whatever power I build in my life, I'm building working with people I know from the get go are going to support survivors of abuse, not be abusers themselves. And it's
Right.
really important to me. I've been, because I worked for 10 years building a community, thinking, this is great, this is what I've always wanted, I can depend on these people. And in the end, I found these people in this community, some of them have been sexually abusing my close friends and family. And when I found out,
Mm.
I felt so betrayed. I can't even describe how betrayed I felt. And it's not like I even questioned cutting it out, but it's been really hard to build everything from scratch. And this year, I've basically built my entire community from scratch. So, I mean, it's kind of amazing that that Brandon and I have done anything, because if it wasn't for him, let me just say he's my best friend. Brandon Michael is my best friend, and he helped me to realize I can start again. And when I realized that, I started working to build awareness of, what I wanted to do. And through this event, I've created an entirely new community. So from here on out, it's only going to grow in that way. I'm not going to allow people in if I hear that they are abusers. And I have people telling me. I have people that are part of my community telling me they have been abused by certain people. And then I stop working with them. And I do it silently in the sense that I just don't answer their calls anymore. And I mean, it does get out because suddenly, their close friends aren't
Mm-hmm.
talking to me either. So it's not like the message isn't getting across. And I will
Right.
tell anyone who confronts me and says, "Hey, why aren't you working with this person?" I will tell them. And I'm very open about it. I don't like to be complicit with like social media drama. I guess I try to be more. I don't know if it's a flaw, and I'm willing
Mm-hmm.
to receive that criticism. If any of you out there think that there's a better way for me to deal with this, let me know. And this is not easy for me, so I'll listen to any feedback because I don't think it's easy for anyone. And maybe when we discuss things together, we can find the best sort of format for doing that. But the point is that I'm standing in solidarity with the survivors, and everyone I work with is on the same page. And so we're building a powerful network. This is cross genre, it's across the nation. I'm working with people worldwide, but there's people across the nation right now on the same
Right.
page with exactly what I'm talking about. And we're working together. So that's powerful. And that's what gives me strength.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that too, because I can just tell seeing you that it's not easy to say that. And um, I have a friend that I probably would like to have on the podcast too, who's gone through some similar things, and I kind of feel like hearing just hearing another person say it, that's why representation is important. Just to know that, like you said, you are not alone. Um, and just with recent news events and everything else, now it kind of feels like everybody's coming out of the woodwork, but it's all because you can't stand to be quiet about it anymore. um, and I had said to this friend too, just today actually, like right before this interview actually, um, it requires so much energy to continue to keep damaging people in your life. And yeah, it takes a lot of energy to cut them all down and start anew, but don't you feel a lot better knowing that you're like you can proudly call the people that are in your community and your friends as people that you look up to and people that are doing good things in the world, as opposed to like keeping these people around that really don't do anything for you and in fact are abusers themselves.
Yes, it does feel better. And it's not always easy for me to purely feel that. And yet, I've started to make a list of people who I call the good ones. And they're the people in my life who make me feel supported and I feel safe. And so I I mean, I guess I can even read the good ones list, but the point is that the good ones to me are the ones who are there for me, and they're the ones who are just generally going to be there for other people. Like for instance, I'm producing other songwriters, and some of these are younger women, and I know that it's a very very toxic industry. I know because my partner in this, Orion Rose, is someone who grew up in the industry. I'm not going to share any details, but we're working together with inside information about how the industry treats
Mm-hmm.
especially women that I'm working to change. And I want to create a full production network that you can enter into knowing you'll be safe. And so it's important to me that the people on my good ones list are there in a way that I can just say, oh, yeah, go to James Meter's studio and record your album. And I know James is going to take care of them. I have full 100% faith, you know? And so,
Right.
and I can give that vote of trust to anyone that I'm working with. And that's what's important.
That's awesome. It's
Hmm.
like a safe network kind of.
It's super necessary, in my opinion. So, I mean, off the top of my head, there's James Meter, and then I work with Ben Rosette. I work with Brandon Michael. I work with um, Leo Lobo, and the band that I'm building. And when I think about these people, Orion Rose, Sophie Fielding, like they, to me, help bring life. They help make life livable, and it's not always easy. Like when you see such darkness in the world. So I I have a hard time being eloquent with emotional things, but concisely put, this is the light in my darkness. These people are the light in my darkness.
You are truly a poet. So I think that's well said. I think that's well said. Well, I kind of want to bring you back to maybe like a good topic to sort of wrap everything up with possibly is back to the musical influences thing. The question I always ask being, what are the three albums you pretty much couldn't live without if you had to pick three to listen to? And I was surprised to hear that there was overlap with one from a previous guest that I had like zero understanding of. So
Okay,
hit
I'm
me with it.
curious what the overlap is. All right, my top three, and I'm thinking like these are the albums I've listened to nonstop over and over and over, more than any other albums. All right, number one, Cat Power, You Are Free. And I can give a story after this, but that album has changed my life and it brought me through a lot. Smashing Pumpkins, Siamese Dream. Took me a long time to get into it. And
Yeah, that was the overlap. By the
the
way, I was
overlap,
surprised.
it,
Yeah,
it's
that's
a,
two points for Siamese Dream.
Siamese Dream is an album that is hard to, at least in my life, it grew on me. And then when it really grew on me is like, it's not letting go. Um, and then Third Eye Blind, their first album, it's still an album that I find myself wanting to bump. And actually, all three of those are, but it's amazing how often I've listened to all three of those albums, and I still
Yeah,
find myself just wanting to listen through the whole thing over and over and over.
the debut. That's the one with like semi charmed life
Hmm.
and is Jumper. No, Jumper's not on that one.
Yeah,
I'm just
Junkers.
okay. I was just thinking of like, well, now that you said your age, like I actually turned 28 tomorrow, so I was, we're both 90s kids, but I always associate that song with honestly like elementary school into middle school dances, so that's kind of weird, but uh I mean, it may not have the same emotional significance it does to you, but that's definitely one that gets stuck in my head. But I actually listened to a little bit of Cat Power today because I really hadn't listened to her, and I can totally dig that. But what's the story behind Cat Power?
Well, so I had Cat Power, You Are Free on vinyl, and I was 18 years old, and at the time I was deep in a lot of substance abuse and I was deep in a lot of depression. And I, funny enough, for much of a year, only listened to side one, and then
Hmm.
I listened to the B side of it. Like for it was just like so perfect. Like it's hard to explain the synchronicity, but when I listened to it, it's like it gave me another perspective into my feelings, and she helped me get through. I mean, as one example, I went through an overdose, and then when I was recovering from it, my friend Sophie came over and we played Cat Power songs. And so and I played those Cat Power songs every day for like 2 years. There were 3 songs.
Hmm.
And so it's like one of those examples of an artist who reached me when I felt like I was falling. And I feel very empathetic towards them because I don't know their pronouns. I want to be respectful and say them, but um, I've I've heard that right before they broke it with the greatest, they checked into rehab, and
Hmm.
I can relate to that kind of vulnerability of self-sabotage, like not not believing in yourself or just carrying too much of a burden and then almost not making it. And I feel like if there was any chance of me falling through the cracks, Cat Power was there to catch me. So thank you, Sean Marshall.
Wow, that is really eloquent too. Like cat power was the safety net, kind of.
Hmm.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
Man, I see. I always think about that relationship to music, like what was the stuff that was there for me when I needed it, and God, my list is hours long, so I won't go into it. But I think I have a much better sense of who you are now, and I'm grateful that you shared a lot of pretty difficult to talk about topics. So, are there any other things you want to mention, or any other questions you have for me? Because I have a lot of the things I wanted to say all covered. So,
Well, I just want everyone to know again, you can reach out to me anytime and I will be there to respond. Like I will respond to every message that's sent to me. It may take me a while, but I promise you you will not be neglected or ignored, and you can find me at Werwisp anywhere. I've I came up with that word, and I'm the only one online who's ever used it. So you can find me at werwisp.com, Facebook, Instagram. There's plenty of ways to reach out to me, and if you feel like you want to share a story with me, please do. We're not alone.
that's awesome. Yeah, I will drop all those links after the interview and stuff too, just for sticking power. But Miles, thank you very very much for coming on today. I appreciate you working with my schedule, and I'm glad that you kind of have a voice to give to people who might not have one. So, um,
Thank you.
yeah, thanks so much for sharing. And I'm just going to be in touch with you, and we'll lead out with a song. But thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
So much. All right, take care.
Again, you've been listening to Familiar Face by Miles Maltbie, also known as Werwisp. And that is spelled Werwisp. They have their stuff everywhere you can type that into a search bar: Spotify, Reverb Nation, Facebook, Instagram, all the usuals. So please go follow them there. They are coming out with some really interesting music videos and stuff coming up soon. So thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to Tapestry. Till next time.